I am Julian, 28 years old, and the sensation of water filling my lungs is something that still wakes me up in the middle of the night, gasping for air. Before I tell you how I ended up exposing my own family in front of the city's elite, let me ask you this before we dive in. Have you ever trusted someone with your life, only to realize they were the ones holding the knife? If you have, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I want to know I'm not the only one. It was supposed to be a celebration. My older brother, Cameron, had just secured a massive merger for the family business. He was 30 years old, the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong. To mark the occasion, my parents threw a lavish party at their summer estate in the Hamptons. It was the kind of place with manicured hedges, waiters in white tuxedos, and a swimming pool that looked more like a small lake. I parked my beat-up Jeep Wrangler around the back, careful not to block the view of the luxury cars lining the driveway. There was a sea of Mercedes, BMWs, and right in the center, Cameron's pride and joy, a brand new, matte black Porsche 911. It looked like a shark on wheels, aggressive and expensive. Just like him. I walked into the backyard, adjusting the collar of my shirt. I felt out of place. I always did. While Cameron was closing deals in boardrooms, I was a certified scuba diving instructor. I spent my days in the ocean, teaching tourists how to breathe underwater, how to respect the deep. My parents called it playing mermaid. They told their friends I was finding myself, code for he's a disappointment. There he is, the fish man, Cameron shouted from the pool deck. He was holding a glass of scotch, his shirt unbuttoned halfway down his chest. He was already drunk. I could see it in the glassy look in his eyes, the way he swayed slightly as he stood there. "Hey, Cameron, congrats on the merger," I said, trying to keep it civil. I just wanted to make an appearance, eat some food, and leave. "Congrats? That's it." Cameron sneered, stepping closer. He smelled like expensive cologne and aged whiskey. "You know, Julian, while you're out there playing with dolphins, I'm securing the family legacy. This inheritance isn't going to build itself. I don't care about the money, Cam. You know that," I replied, turning to walk toward the buffet. He grabbed my arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. "You don't care? Or you just know you're too stupid to manage it?" He laughed, looking around for an audience. A few of his sycophantic friends chuckled along with him. "Come on, little brother. Let's see if all that time in the ocean has made you tough. Let's race." "I'm not swimming, Cameron. I'm in my clothes," I said, pulling my arm away. "Scared," he taunted. "Mom, Dad, Julian is scared to get in the water." My mother, Eleanor, floated over. She was wearing a silk dress that probably cost more than my annual salary. She held a champagne flute and looked at me with that familiar mix of pity and annoyance. "Julian, don't be a spoilsport. Your brother is celebrating. Just humor him." "I'm wearing jeans, Mom," I said. "Take them off. Or are you afraid I'll beat you?" Cameron yelled, tossing his drink onto the grass. He stripped off his shirt and dove into the pool with a heavy splash. He surfaced, slicking his hair back. "Come on. One lap. Underwater. Let's see who has the better lungs. The professional diver or the CEO." I sighed. I looked at my wrist. I was wearing my new smartwatch, a rugged model designed for diving. It was waterproof up to 100 meters. I knew I shouldn't engage, but the way my father, Robert, was looking at me, like I was a coward, triggered something. "Fine," I muttered. "One lap." I kicked off my shoes and jumped in, fully clothed. The water was cool, a shock to the system. My heavy denim jeans weighed me down instantly, but I was used to weight. I was a diver. I knew how to move in the water better than anyone here. "Ready, set, go," my father shouted from the edge, acting like this was the Olympics. I took a deep breath, filling my diaphragm, and submerged. The silence of the water was usually my sanctuary. I kicked off the wall, gliding smoothly along the bottom. I could see Cameron's blurry shape thrashing next to me. He was wasting energy, fighting the water instead of moving with it. I reached the other side of the pool effortlessly. I was about to surface when I felt a hand on my head. First, I thought it was a joke. Maybe Cameron was playing tag. But then the grip tightened. Heavy fingers dug into my scalp. Profound weight slammed down on my shoulders. I tried to push up, but Cameron was on top of me. He had wrapped his legs around my waist and was using his entire body weight to pin me to the pool floor. I struggled, twisting my body. My training kicked in, don't panic, conserve oxygen. I reached up, clawing at his arms. But he was slippery with water and sweat. And he was heavy. I looked up. Through the shimmering blue surface, I could see the distorted shapes of the party guests. They were standing around the edge. Were they cheering? Did they think this was a game? My lungs started to burn. The carbon dioxide buildup was triggering the urge to breathe. I thrashed harder, driving an elbow into Cameron's ribs. He didn't let go. If anything, he pushed down harder. This wasn't a game. I opened my eyes wide, staring at the tiles on the bottom of the pool. My chest was screaming. The burning sensation spread to my limbs. My vision started to tunnel. He's killing me, I thought. The realization was cold and sharp. My brother is drowning me. I tried one last desperate heave, my hand scrabbling at my wrist. My fingers brushed against the side button of my watch. I pressed it. A tiny red LED light blinked on. SOS mode. Audio recording initiated. Then the darkness crept in. My diaphragm spasmed. Couldn't hold it anymore. My mouth opened in a reflex gasp. Water rushed in. It wasn't like drinking a glass of water. It was an invasion. It burned like acid as it flooded my windpipe and filled my lungs. The pain was blinding, absolute. And then, there was nothing. Just cold, dark silence. The next thing I knew, my world was a chaotic explosion of noise and pain. I was coughing. A violent, racking cough that felt like my chest was turning inside out. Water and bile spewed from my mouth. I rolled onto my side, heaving, gasping for air that wouldn't come fast enough. He's okay. He's okay, folks. My father's booming voice cut through the ringing in my ears. I blinked, my vision blurry. I was lying on the wet concrete of the pool deck. My chest felt like it had been trampled by a horse. I tasted copper. Blood. I was coughing up blood. I looked up. A young lifeguard, a kid named Lucas who couldn't have been more than 19, was kneeling beside me, looking terrified. He had an oxygen mask in his hand, but my mother was pushing it away. He doesn't need that, my mother hissed at the lifeguard. He just swallowed a little water. He's fine. Ma'am, he was unconscious, Lucas stammered. He wasn't breathing for nearly 2 minutes. We need to call an ambulance. No ambulance. My father stepped in, his massive frame blocking the view of the guests. He turned to the crowd, putting on his best boardroom smile. Sorry for the scare. Everyone. Julian here got a cramp. You know how it is, forgot to stretch. Weak swimmer, that one. Always has been. Weak swimmer? I tried to speak, but only a gurgle of bloody water came out. I was a certified instructor. I could freedive 60 feet. I saw Cameron standing a few feet away. He was wrapped in a towel, shivering, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his fiancée, Sophia, who looked horrified. I tried to help him, Cameron lied, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. I saw him struggling. I tried to pull him up, but he panicked. He pulled me down. I barely got out myself. You, I croaked, the word scraping my raw throat. You held me down. My mother dropped to her knees beside me. She wasn't checking my pulse. She wasn't wiping the blood from my chin. She leaned close to my ear, her fingernails digging into my bicep. Shut up, she whispered, her voice venomous. Do not make a scene, Julian. This is your brother's night. Do not ruin this. He tried to kill me. I wheezed, tears of pain and rage pricking my eyes. He was playing, she snapped. And you took it too far, as usual. Look at you. You're a mess. You're embarrassing us. I looked past her. The lifeguard, Lucas, was still holding his radio. He looked ready to key it to call for help. My father saw it too. Robert walked over to the kid. He put a heavy hand on Lucas's shoulder and leaned in. I couldn't hear exactly what he said, but I saw Lucas flinch. I saw the color drain from the kid's face. He slowly lowered the radio. "Get him into the pool house," my father commanded two of the catering staff. "Let him dry off. He's just being dramatic." I tried to stand, but my legs were like jelly. The waiters hauled me up. As they dragged me away, I looked back at my family. My father was pouring champagne. My mother was laughing, a high-pitched, fake sound, reassuring the guests. And Cameron was watching me. He brought a finger to his lips in a shushing motion, and then smiled. Cold, dead smile. They dragged me into the pool house and dumped me on a wicker sofa. "Stay here," one of the waiters said, looking apologetic. "Your dad said you're not allowed to leave until the party is over." I lay there, shivering uncontrollably. My lungs rattled with every breath. I knew I had aspirated water. I knew about secondary drowning. I could die in my sleep tonight if I didn't get to a hospital. I looked at my wrist. My watch was still there. The red light was no longer blinking. The recording had stopped when the memory buffer filled or when I hit the surface. I pulled it off my wrist with trembling fingers. I didn't listen to it. Not yet. I shoved it deep into the pocket of my soaked jeans. I wasn't going to die in a pool house while they drank champagne. I forced myself to stand. The room spun violently. I grabbed the doorframe, gritting my teeth. I stumbled out the back door of the pool house, avoiding the party. I staggered through the hedges, scratching my face on the branches. I made it to my Jeep. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the keys twice. Finally, I got the engine started. I didn't look back at the mansion. I drove. I drove toward the lights of the nearest hospital, coughing blood onto the steering wheel, fueled by a single, burning thought. They wanted me to be the weak swimmer. They wanted a tragedy or a joke. What they were going to get was a war. The drive to the ER was a blur of streetlights and agony. Every breath felt like inhaling broken glass. By the time I crashed through the sliding doors of the emergency room, my vision was graying out at the edges again. "Help!" I rasped, collapsing onto the linoleum floor. I remember voices, the squeak of gurney wheels, and the bright, harsh lights of the trauma bay. Then the comforting darkness took me again. When I woke up, the silence was the first thing I noticed. It wasn't the heavy, muffled silence of being underwater. It was the sterile, beeping silence of a hospital room. I tried to sit up, but a sharp pain in my chest pinned me back down. I looked around. Tubes. For lines. A monitor tracking my heart rate. "Easy, Tiger," a familiar voice said. I turned my head. Standing at the foot of the bed, reading a chart, was Dr. Elijah. Elijah wasn't just my doctor. He was an old friend from college. We used to dive together before he went to med school. "Elijah," I croaked. My voice sounded like gravel. "You're lucky to be alive, Julian," Elijah said, his face grim. He didn't have his usual easygoing smile. "You had a significant amount of water in your lungs. Pneumonitis. Low oxygen saturation. We had to pump your stomach. Another minute under there, and brain damage would have been a certainty." "It wasn't a cramp," I whispered. "I know," Elijah said. He walked around to the side of the bed and lowered his voice. "I saw the report your parents tried to give the triage nurse. They called ahead. Said you had a panic attack in the pool. Said you have a history of hysteria." I closed my eyes, a wave of shame and anger washing over me. "Of course they did. But Julian," Elijah continued, his tone turning serious, "panic attacks don't leave thumb-shaped bruises on your trapezius muscles." He pulled the collar of my hospital gown down slightly. He held up a mirror. I looked. There on my shoulders were dark purple welts, distinct marks of fingers digging in. And here, Elijah pointed to the back of my neck, contusions consistent with forceful restraint. "Someone held you down, Julian. This wasn't an accident. This was assault. Attempted homicide." Hearing him say it out loud made it real. It wasn't just a rivalry. It wasn't just Cameron being a bully. He had tried to end me. Where are my clothes? I asked suddenly, panic spiking. My jeans. My watch. Relax. Elijah patted a plastic bag on the chair. Everything is there. Your watch is on the side table. It was blinking, so I turned it off. I grabbed the watch. It was a rugged, black piece of tech, innocent-looking to the untrained eye. I clutched it like a lifeline. Did anyone come? I asked. My parents. Elijah's jaw tightened. Your father came by about an hour ago. He didn't come in. He spoke to the hospital administrator. He tried to get you transferred to a private psychiatric facility upstate. Psychiatric? I felt cold all over. Yeah. He claimed you were suicidal. Said you tried to drown yourself at the party and now you're making up stories about your brother. Elijah shook his head in disgust. I blocked it. I told them you are medically unstable and cannot be moved. I put you on a restricted visitor list. No one gets in here without my approval. Thank you, I breathed. Elijah, thank you. Julian, you need to call the police, Elijah said. I have a legal obligation to report this as a suspected assault, but it carries more weight if you press charges. Not yet, I said, staring at the black screen of the watch. If I call the cops now, my dad's lawyers will bury it. They'll say I'm crazy. They'll have witness statements from 50 party guests saying I jumped in willingly. So what are you going to do? I need to know what I have, I said. Can you help me sit up? Elijah cranked the bed up. I picked up the watch and navigated to the saved audio files. My hands were shaking. I found the file marked 1942, SOS. I pressed play. At first, there was just the muffled, rhythmic thumping of water, the sound of me swimming, then the splashing, the chaotic noise of the struggle. Let go, my muffled voice underwater. Then, the clear, terrifying sound of Cameron's voice, distorted by the water but undeniable. Die, you useless piece of trash. Just die. Elijah's eyes went wide. The recording continued. The sound of my desperate gasps. The sickening gurgle of water entering my lungs. Then silence on my end. Just the water moving. But the recording didn't stop there. The watch had surfaced when they pulled me out. The audio quality became crisp, terrified, and revealing. He's not breathing. Cameron, what did you do? That was my mother, Eleanor. Her voice wasn't worried about me. She sounded annoyed, frantic about the situation. I didn't mean to. He just wouldn't stop fighting. Cameron sounded breathless, maybe a little scared, but mostly defensive. Is he dead? My father's voice, deep, calculating. There was a pause. I could hear the wet slap of my limp body being dragged onto the concrete. He's got a pulse, but it's weak, Cameron said. Then came the part that froze the blood in my veins. Listen to me, my father said. If he dies, it was an accident. He had a cramp. He sank. You dove in to save him. Do you understand? We are not losing the merger over this. We are not losing the company because you got carried away. But what if he wakes up? Cameron asked. He knows. Then we say he's confused. My mother chimed in. Her voice was icy calm. Oxygen deprivation causes hallucinations. We'll paint him as unstable. We've done it before. Remember the treehouse? Yeah. Cameron laughed. A nervous, jagged sound. Yeah. Weak swimmer. Crazy Julian. I stopped the recording. The room was silent, save for the heart monitor which was now beeping faster, matching my rising rage. Oh my God, Elijah whispered. They were planning your cover-up while you were dying at their feet. Remember the treehouse? I repeated, staring at the wall. The memory hit me like a physical blow. I was 10 years old. I had built a treehouse in the old oak tree in the backyard. It was my sanctuary. One day, Cameron climbed up. He was 12. He didn't want the treehouse, he just didn't want me to have it. He started shaking the branch I was sitting on. I begged him to stop. He just laughed. He shook it harder until the wood snapped. I fell 20 feet. I shattered my left arm and broke 2 ribs. When my parents came out, Cameron was crying fake tears. He told them I was jumping up and down, trying to show off. My father looked at my broken body and told the doctors I was clumsy and hyperactive. They never blamed Cameron. They never protected me. That was the pattern. Cameron broke things, and I was the glue they used to fix it, even if it meant grinding me down to dust. I have them, I whispered. Elijah, I have them. You have evidence of conspiracy, Elijah said. This is huge. But Julian, be careful. If they find out you have this, they will come for you. And not just with lawyers. I know, I said. That's why I need to leave. You can't leave. You're on oxygen. I'll sign out AMA against medical advice, I said, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. The room spun, but I gritted my teeth. I can't stay here. My father knows I'm here. He has connections on the board. He'll find a way to get to me, or get me committed. Elijah looked at me, torn between his duty as a doctor and his loyalty as a friend. Finally, he sighed. Okay, but you're not going alone. And you're not going to your apartment. They'll look for you there. Where should I go? My family has a cabin up near the lake. It's off the grid. No landline. Spotty cell service. Go there. Heal up. Figure out your next move. He scribbled an address on a prescription pad and tore it off. Take the back exit. My shift ends in 10 minutes. I'll drive your Jeep around back. I nodded, clutching the paper. Elijah, thank you. Don't thank me yet, he said grimly. Just promise me one thing. When you take them down, make sure they stay down. Oh, they will, I said, a dark promise forming in my mind. I'm going to wait for the perfect moment. The moment when they feel safest. When they think they've won. I dressed in my damp, stiff jeans and ruined shirt. I slipped out the back service elevator, moving like a ghost. Every step was agony. My lungs burning, my ribs aching. But the pain was good. The pain was a reminder. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a witness, and I was holding the smoking gun. As I waited in the shadows of the ambulance bay for my Jeep, my phone buzzed. I hesitated, then looked at the screen. A text from my father. Dad, stop being dramatic. We handled the situation. We told everyone you're resting. If you speak to anyone, remember who pays your rent. Remember who controls your trust fund. Come home. We need to talk about your future. I stared at the screen. My future. He had no idea. My future wasn't something he could control anymore. My future was going to be the end of his. I didn't reply. I turned off the phone, pulled the SIM card out and snapped it in half. Elijah pulled up in my Jeep. I climbed in, wincing. As I drove away into the night, leaving the city and my family behind, I didn't feel fear anymore. I felt a cold, calculating clarity. I had the recording, but I needed more. I needed to know why. Why now? Why drown me? Cameron had always been a bully. But murder? That was an escalation. There was a missing piece to this puzzle. And I knew exactly who could give it to me. Isaac, the family lawyer. The man who had been my grandmother's confidant, and the only person in that snake pit of a family who had ever looked at me with kindness. I turned the Jeep onto the highway, heading north. The game had changed, and for the first time in my life I was playing to win. 3 days later, I was sitting in a diner on the outskirts of the city, wearing a hoodie pulled low over my face. My chest still ached with every breath, a constant reminder of the water that had filled my lungs. I looked at the coffee in front of me, watching the ripples. I had spent the last 2 days at Elijah's cabin, listening to that recording over and over again, analyzing it. But I couldn't stay hidden forever. I needed to build my case. The first step was the lifeguard. Lucas. I had tracked him down through social media. He was a college student working part-time. I knew where he took his lunch break. The bell above the diner door jingled. Lucas walked in, looking nervous. He scanned the room, eyes darting. When he saw me, he froze. He looked like he wanted to run. I raised a hand, gesturing for him to sit. He hesitated, then slowly walked over and slid into the booth opposite me. He looked pale. "Mr. Julian," he whispered. I thought you were still in the hospital. I checked myself out, I said, my voice raspy. How much did he pay you, Lucas? Lucas flinched. I don't know what you're talking about. My father, I said, leaning in. How much did Robert pay you to keep that radio down? To lie on the incident report. I didn't lie, Lucas stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. You had a cramp. I'm a dive master, Lucas. I can hold my breath for 4 minutes. I didn't have a cramp. My brother held me down. And you saw it. Lucas looked down at his hands. Look, man. I'm sorry. Really. But your dad. He said he'd call the agency. He said he'd have me blacklisted. He said I was negligent for letting you in the pool drunk. I wasn't drunk. That's not what the report says, Lucas whispered. He gave me $5,000. Cash. Said it was a scholarship for my troubles. Said if I talked, he'd sue my family for defamation. $5,000. My life was worth $5,000 to my father. Less than the cost of the champagne at the party. Lucas, I said softly, I'm not going to sue you, but I am going to take them down. And when I do, you don't want to be on the side of the people who covered up an attempted murder. That makes you an accessory. The kid looked terrified. What do you want me to do? Just write down the truth. What you really saw. Sign it, date it, and keep it safe. When the time comes, I'll need you. Lucas nodded, swallowing hard. Okay. I saw him on top of you. I saw him holding your head. I wanted to jump in, but your dad. He grabbed my arm. He held me back. Good, I said. Write that down. I left the diner feeling a mix of victory and disgust. My father had physically restrained the lifeguard. It was premeditated on every level. I walked back to my Jeep parked in the alley. As I reached for the door handle, a low growl of an engine made me freeze. I turned. Blocking the exit of the alley was the matte black Porsche 911. The window rolled down. Cameron sat there wearing designer sunglasses, looking pristine. Not a hint of guilt on his face. You're hard to find, little brother, Cameron said, smirking. Mom's worried sick. She thinks you're on a bender. Get out of my way, Cameron, I said, my hand tightening on my keys. We need to talk, he said, opening the door and stepping out. He was big, broad-shouldered. He used to intimidate me. Now, looking at him, all I saw was a coward. I have nothing to say to you, I said. Dad's cutting you off, you know, Cameron said, leaning against his car. The allowance, the rent, the trust fund. It's all gone. Unless what? Unless you sign this. He reached into the car and pulled out a manila envelope. He tossed it onto the hood of my Jeep. It's a non-disclosure agreement. And a waiver of liability. Basically, you agree that what happened at the pool was an accident caused by your own negligence. And in exchange, Dad keeps the money flowing. I laughed. It was a dry, painful sound. You think I want your money? Everyone wants the money, Julian, Cameron sneered. Without us, you're nothing. Just a fish man living in a studio apartment. Sign the papers. Don't be stupid. Tell me something, Cam, I said, stepping closer to him. Why? Why did you hold me down? Was it just for fun? Or were you actually trying to kill me? Cameron took off his sunglasses. His eyes were cold, devoid of humanity. Does it matter? You've always been in the way. Always the victim. Poor Julian, the sensitive one. It makes me sick. You don't deserve the name Mitchell. Is that it? I asked. Just hate. Cameron smiled, and for a second, I saw the truth. It wasn't just hate. It was desperation. You turn 30 in 2 weeks, Julian, he said cryptically. Happy early birthday. He got back in his car. Sign the papers. Or don't. Either way, you're done. He revved the engine and peeled out of the alley, leaving me in a cloud of exhaust. I turned 30 in 2 weeks. Why did that matter? I needed to see Isaac. Isaac Goldberg had been my grandmother's lawyer for 40 years. His office was in an old brownstone downtown, smelling of old paper and mahogany. I didn't have an appointment, but his secretary, Mrs. Gable, ushered me in immediately when she saw the bruises on my neck. "Julian," Isaac said, standing up from his desk. He was a small man, bald, with sharp, intelligent eyes. "My God, I heard rumors, but you look terrible." "I need to know about the trust, Isaac," I said, skipping the pleasantries. "My grandmother's trust. Cameron mentioned my birthday." Isaac sighed, taking off his glasses. He gestured for me to sit. "I was afraid of this. I told your father I would be contacting you, but he insisted he would handle it." "Handle what?" Isaac pulled a thick file from his drawer. "Your grandmother, God rest her soul, didn't trust your father. She knew he was reckless with money, and she knew he favored Cameron." He opened the file. "She set up a separate trust. $5 million. It was designated to be split between you and Cameron. But there's a clause. A character clause." "What does it say?" "It says that the funds are to be released when the youngest beneficiary, that's you, turns 30. However," Isaac paused, looking at me gravely, "if one of the beneficiaries is deemed unfit due to criminal activity, severe mental instability, or death, the entire sum reverts to the surviving beneficiary." My blood ran cold. $5 million, I whispered. "So if I'm dead, Cameron gets it all," Isaac finished. "Or, if you are committed to a psychiatric institution and declared mentally incompetent, Cameron gets it all." The puzzle pieces slammed together. The attempt in the pool. The lie about the panic attack. My father trying to transfer me to a psych ward. They weren't just covering up an accident. They were building a case for my insanity. They were trying to have me declared incompetent before my birthday so Cameron could take the full $5 million. He needs the money, I realized. The merger, the Porsche, it's all a front, isn't it? The company is in trouble. Your father has leveraged everything, Isaac confirmed. They are cash poor. They need that trust fund to cover the debts and finalize the merger. Without it, the house of cards falls. I sat back, feeling sick. My own parents. They were willing to sacrifice my life or my sanity for $5 million. "They tried to kill me, Isaac," I said, my voice shaking. "In the pool. Cameron held me down. Dad stopped the lifeguard. They were going to let me drown." Isaac's face went white. "Do you have proof?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the watch. "I recorded it." Isaac took the watch. I played the audio for him. The sound of the struggle, the death threats, the cover-up conversation. When it finished, Isaac sat in silence for a long time. He looked older, tired. "This is admissible," he said finally, "in both criminal and civil court. This is monstrous. I want to destroy them, Isaac," I said. "Not just sue them. I want to expose them. I want everyone to know who they really are." "You have a plan?" "Cameron's engagement party," I said. "It's next Saturday. Everyone will be there. The board members, the investors, Sophia's family." Isaac looked at me, a gleam appearing in his eye. "The engagement party is also doubling as the announcement for his promotion to CEO. It's the perfect stage." "Will you help me?" I asked. "Your grandmother would have wanted me to protect you," Isaac said, closing the file. "I'll be there, as a guest of the estate. I'll bring the original will. And Julian, I'll bring security." I nodded. "One more thing. I need to make sure the audio is perfect. I need them to hear every word." "Leave that to me," Isaac said. "I have a forensic audio specialist. We'll clean it up. We'll make sure your mother's voice rings out like a bell." I left Isaac's office feeling a weight lift off my chest. I wasn't alone anymore. I had the truth. I had the motive. And I had the weapon. They wanted to paint me as the crazy, weak brother. Fine. I'd play the part. I'd let them think I was broken. I'd let them think they had won. And then I'd drag them down to the deep end. The week leading up to the engagement party was a masterclass in deception. I stayed at Elijah's cabin, but I made sure to leave a digital trail that suggested I was spiraling. I posted vague, depressing statuses on social media. I ignored calls from mutual friends, letting them go to voicemail. I wanted them to think I was hiding, scared, and unstable. I wanted them to lower their guard. Isaac sent me the enhanced audio file. It was chilling. The background noise of the water had been dampened, making the voices cut through with terrifying clarity. Hearing my mother say, "If he dies, it was an accident," in high definition was enough to make me vomit. But I forced myself to listen to it. I needed to memorize the timing. 2 days before the party, my phone rang. It was Nathan, my cousin. Nathan was the family weasel. He worshipped Cameron and would do anything to be part of the inner circle. If he was calling, it was because Cameron sent him. I answered on the third ring, making my voice sound groggy and weak. "Hello, Jules. Buddy." Nathan's voice was overly cheerful. "How you holding up? We haven't seen you." I'm not good, Nate." I lied. "I'm confused. My head hurts." "Yeah. Aunt Eleanor said you were having a rough time," Nathan probed. "Listen, about Saturday, the engagement party. You coming?" I hesitated, letting the silence stretch. "I don't think I should. Dad said." "Bro, forget what your dad said." Nathan interrupted. "It's Cameron's big day. Sophia really wants you there. She feels bad about what happened. She thinks if you come, it'll show everyone that we're a united family. It'll help smooth things over. It was a trap. They wanted me there to display me, to show the world the unstable brother, to parade me around like a broken toy so that when they committed me later, everyone would say, 'Oh yes, I saw him at the party. He looked deranged.'" "I don't know," I whined. "Come on, Julian. Just for an hour. Dad promises he won't be mad. He even has a suit for you. Come on. Bury the hatchet." "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, I'll come. But I can't stay long." "Awesome. That's the spirit. See you there, buddy." Nathan hung up. I put the phone down and smiled. They took the bait. They thought they were luring a lamb to the slaughter. They didn't know they were inviting the wolf. The day of the party arrived. I shaved the scruff off my face, but I left the dark circles under my eyes. I put on a black suit, not the one my father offered, but my own. It was simple, sharp. I looked like I was going to a funeral. In a way, I was going to bury my family's reputation. I drove to the estate. The parking lot was full of luxury cars again. The valet looked at my Jeep with disdain, but I tossed him the keys and walked to the entrance. Security was tighter this time. 2 large men in black suits stood by the gate with a guest list. "Name?" One grunted. "Julian Mitchell," I said. He checked the list. "Right. Your father left instructions. You're to go straight to the main hall. No wandering." "Understood." I walked in. The house was transformed. Crystals dripped from the chandeliers. White roses were everywhere. A string quartet played in the corner. It was sickeningly beautiful. I spotted Isaac across the room. He was dressed in a tuxedo, looking dignified. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. He was standing near the AV booth where the sound system for the speeches was set up. We had a plan. I navigated through the crowd. People whispered as I passed. "That's the brother," I heard a woman say. "The one with the mental problems." "Poor Eleanor," another replied. "Having to deal with that." I kept my head down, playing the part. I grabbed a glass of water, my hand shaking intentionally. "Julian." My mother appeared. She looked radiant and terrifying. "You came. Nathan said you wanted me here," I mumbled. "We did," she said, gripping my arm tightly. Her nails dug in just like by the pool. "Listen to me. You smile. You shake hands. And if anyone asks, you had a reaction to medication last week." "Understood." "Yes, Mom," I said softly. "Good. Go say hello to your brother. He's by the stage." I walked toward the front of the room. Cameron was holding court, laughing with a group of investors. Sophia was by his side, looking beautiful but strained. She saw me approaching and her eyes widened. "Julian," Sophia said, stepping forward. "Are you okay?" I'm fine, Sophia, I said. I actually liked Sophia. She was decent. She didn't know what she was marrying into. I almost felt bad for what I was about to do. Almost. Well, look who dragged himself out of the gutter, Cameron boomed, slapping me on the back. He leaned in close, his whiskey breath hot in my ear. Don't try anything, freak. Security is watching you. I just want to wish you luck, I said. Luck is for losers, Cameron laughed. I make my own destiny. Ladies and gentlemen, my father's voice rang out over the microphone. He stood on the small stage. If I could have everyone's attention. The room went quiet. The music stopped. Tonight is a special night, my father began. We celebrate not only the union of my son Cameron and the lovely Sophia, but also the future of Mitchell Logistics. It is my pride and joy to announce that Cameron will be taking over as CEO effective immediately. Applause thundered. Cameron puffed out his chest, beaming. And my father continued, his eyes landing on me with a predatory glint. It warms my heart to see our whole family here, even Julian, who has had a difficult week. But family supports family, right? More applause. Pity applause for me. Cameron, come up here and say a few words, Dad said. Cameron bounded up the stairs. He took the mic. Thanks, Dad. You know, success isn't just about money. It's about strength. It's about being the survivor. I looked at Isaac. He was standing next to the sound technician. He signaled me. The tech stepped away for a bathroom break. Isaac had paid him $500 for 5 minutes of access. I moved. I didn't walk to the stage. I walked to the AV booth. What is he doing? I heard my mother hiss. I stepped up to the mixing board. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. It was already paired to the Bluetooth receiver Isaac had plugged in earlier. Julian, Cameron asked from the stage, looking confused. What are you doing? Get away from there. I grabbed the spare microphone on the table. Sorry to interrupt, I said. My voice boomed through the speakers, louder than Cameron's. The feedback squealed for a second. The crowd gasped. Security started moving toward me. Isaac stepped in their path, flashing his badge and a court order he had prepared. Legal counsel. Stay back. Julian, get down. My father roared, his face turning purple. You talked about strength, Cameron? I said, my voice steady, cold, and clear. You talked about being a survivor. I think we should show everyone how you define strength. Cut the mic, Cameron screamed. Cut the damn mic. But the sound tech was gone. I looked at my parents. I looked at my brother. I saw the fear in their eyes. The pure, unadulterated terror. You told everyone I had a cramp, I said. You told everyone I was weak. You told everyone I was crazy. I pressed the play button on my phone. But the water tells a different story. The room was silent as a tomb, anticipating a breakdown, a scream, something crazy from the unstable brother. Instead, a sound filled the ballroom. Thump, thump, splash. It was the sound of water, amplified by the massive speakers. It sounded like we were all underwater. Then Cameron's voice. Die, you useless piece of trash. Just die. The gasp from the crowd sucked the air out of the room. Cameron dropped his microphone. It clattered loudly on the stage floor. Sophia covered her mouth with her hands. The recording continued. My desperate gasps. The struggle. And then the voice of Eleanor Mitchell, the matriarch, the perfect mother. He's not breathing. Cameron, what did you do? I didn't mean to. He just wouldn't stop fighting. My mother stood frozen near the buffet, her face draining of all color. She looked like a statue of ice about to shatter. Then Robert's voice, the man who had just given a speech about family values. If he dies, it was an accident. He had a cramp. We are not losing the merger over this. A murmur of horror rippled through the guests. Business partners exchanged looks. I saw the CEO of the partnering firm slowly put his glass down and step away from my father. But what if he wakes up? He knows. Then we say he's confused. We'll paint him as unstable. We've done it before. Remember the treehouse? The audio ended with Cameron's nervous laugh. Yeah, weak swimmer. Crazy Julian. I cut the feed. The silence that followed was heavier than the water in the pool. It was the silence of a world ending. I looked at Cameron. He was shaking. He looked small. The golden boy was gone. In his place was a murderer. It wasn't a Cramp, I said into the microphone, my voice echoing. It was attempted murder. For $5 million. Because I turned 30 next week, and you needed my trust fund to cover your debts. Liar! My father screamed, charging toward me. He's doctored it. It's fake. It's AI. But he didn't get far. 2 uniformed police officers stepped out from the kitchen area, led by Dr. Elijah. Robert Mitchell, one officer said, stepping in front of my father. Please step back. You can't be here, my father sputtered. This is a private party. We have a warrant, the officer said, and we have probable cause based on the audio evidence provided by Mr. Julian Mitchell's attorney earlier today. Cameron tried to run. He actually tried to bolt off the stage toward the back exit. Grab him, Officer Torres, the lead detective, shouted. 2 officers tackled Cameron before he even made it to the steps. He went down hard, his tuxedo tearing. Get off me! Do you know who I am? Cameron shrieked. It was the cry of a child who had never been told no. You're a suspect in an attempted homicide investigation, Torres said, hauling him up and slamming the cuffs on. Sophia walked up to Cameron. She looked at him with pure disgust. She took off the massive diamond engagement ring. Sophia, baby, listen, it's a setup, Cameron pleaded. He's crazy. Sophia didn't say a word. She wound up and slapped him across the face. A sharp, cracking sound that echoed through the room. Then she threw the ring into the chocolate fountain. She turned to me, nodded once, and walked out. I looked at my mother. She wasn't running. She wasn't fighting. She was slumped in a chair, weeping. But even now, looking at her, I knew she wasn't crying for me. She was crying for the reputation she had spent 30 years building, which was now burning to the ground. My father was trying to whisper to his lawyer, but Isaac stepped forward. Robert, Isaac said calmly, I have the original will of Grandmother Mitchell, and I have filed a petition this morning to remove you as the trustee due to gross misconduct and conspiracy to commit harm against a beneficiary. Isaac, you traitor, my father hissed. I'm not a traitor, Robert, Isaac said. I'm a lawyer, and you are broke. I stood there, holding the microphone. I looked at the crowd. These people who had judged me, whispered about me, believed the lies. Enjoy the party, I said, and I dropped the mic. This was the moment that changed everything. The moment I took back control of my life. Thank you for being patient with me this far. You are amazing. Please like this video and comment justice below, so I know you stood with me through the storm. Your support helps more people find this story and tells me that my survival meant something. The aftermath was chaotic. The police began questioning guests. The investors for the merger were on their phones, frantically calling their legal teams to pull out of the deal. I stood near the AV booth, watching the empire crumble. Dr. Elijah walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. You okay? I don't know, I said honestly. My adrenaline was crashing. I felt exhausted. Is it over? For them? It's just starting, Elijah said. I watched as they led Cameron out. He was weeping now, shouting that it was Dad's idea, that Mom told him to do it. He told me to hold him down. Cameron screamed at the police. He said we needed the money. Ask him. Shut up, you idiot. My father yelled back as he was being handcuffed for conspiracy and obstruction of justice. I never told you to kill him. You acted on your own. You stood there and watched. Cameron wailed. They were turning on each other. The rats were eating the rats. My mother was escorted out last. She stopped when she saw me. Her mascara was running down her face. She looked like a ghost. Julian, she whispered. We're family. I looked at her. I thought about the treehouse. I thought about the pool. I thought about the Cramp. No, I said coldly. We're relatives. We haven't been family for a long time. I turned my back on her. I walked out of the mansion and into the cool night air. The flashing red and blue lights of the police cars illuminated the driveway. Isaac was waiting for me by my Jeep. "You did good, kid," Isaac said. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now? Cameron goes to prison. Your parents will likely face significant jail time for conspiracy and witness tampering. The assets will be frozen. And the trust. Since they attempted to harm you, the bad actor clause kicks in." Isaac smiled. "Your father loses control immediately. And since Cameron is now a felon, or will be soon, the entire $5 million goes to you. Plus, I imagine we'll be suing for damages. You're going to own this estate, Julian." I looked back at the house. It was a beautiful shell, rotting from the inside. "I don't want the house," I said. "Sell it." "And do what?" "I'm going to open a diving school," I said, "for kids who don't fit in. Kids who need to learn how to breathe when the world tries to drown them." I climbed into my Jeep. I looked at the passenger seat. My diving gear was there. My tank. My regulator. My freedom. I started the engine. For the first time in 28 years, I didn't feel the weight of the water on my chest. I took a deep breath. My lungs were clear. I was alive, and they were sinking. The days following the arrest were a blur of flashing cameras. Aggressive reporters camped out on my front lawn, and endless meetings with lawyers. You might think that seeing your abusers in handcuffs is the end of the story, the moment the credits roll and the hero walks into the sunset. But real life isn't a movie. Real life is messy, bureaucratic, and exhausting. The arrest was just the incision. The surgery was yet to come. My phone didn't stop ringing for a week. Friends I hadn't spoken to since high school suddenly wanted to catch up. Distant relatives who had ignored me at family reunions were suddenly sending long, heartfelt emails about how they always knew something was off with Cameron. I deleted them all. I didn't want their retrospective support. I wanted the silence I had fought so hard to earn. The first major hurdle was the bail hearing. Isaac, my lawyer and the only father figure I had left, picked me up in his sedan. He looked tired but resolute. "They're going to try to paint you as the villain today, Julian," Isaac warned me as we drove toward the courthouse. "Their defense strategy is going to be aggressive. They have to destroy your credibility to save themselves." "Let them try," I said, staring out the window at the gray city skyline. "I have the truth." The courtroom was packed. It seemed like half the city was there, hungry for the downfall of the Mitchell dynasty. When the bailiff announced the case, I saw them. My parents and Cameron were sitting at the defense table, wearing orange jumpsuits. The sight of my mother, usually draped in silk and pearls, wearing stiff, industrial orange cotton was jarring. She looked smaller, older. Her hair, usually perfectly coiffed, was pulled back in a messy bun. She wouldn't look at me. My father, on the other hand, glared. His eyes were burning holes into the side of my head. He looked like a cornered animal, dangerous and desperate. Cameron just stared at the table, rocking slightly back and forth. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Ms. Vance, laid out the charges. Conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, obstruction of justice, witness tampering. It was a laundry list of sins. Then came the defense. My father had hired the most expensive criminal defense attorney in the state, a man known as the Shark. He stood up and pointed a finger directly at me. "Your Honor," he boomed, "this entire case rests on a manipulated recording made by a man with a documented history of instability. Julian Mitchell has been jealous of his brother's success for years. This was a setup, a trap designed to destroy a family's reputation for financial gain." I felt my hands ball into fists under the table. Even now, facing prison, they were sticking to the script. Julian is crazy. Julian is jealous. But Ms. Vance was ready. She called Dr. Elijah to the stand. Elijah was calm, professional, and devastating. He projected the X-rays of my lungs onto the courtroom screens. He showed the photos of the bruises on my neck and shoulders, the distinct, undeniable marks of fingers. "These injuries are inconsistent with a cramp or a panic attack," Elijah stated. his voice ringing through the silent room. These are defensive wounds. The fluid extracted from the victim's lungs contained high levels of chlorine and traces of gastric contents. He didn't just swallow water. He was forced to inhale it while being physically compressed. Then Ms. Vance played the audio. Again. Hearing it in that sterile courtroom was different than hearing it at the party. It wasn't shocking anymore. It was just sad. It sounded like hate distilled into its purest form. When my mother's voice filled the room, "If he dies, it was an accident." I saw the jury members flinch. A woman in the back row covered her mouth. The defense lawyer tried to argue context, but the weight of the evidence was crushing. The judge denied bail. The gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot. "Remanded to custody pending trial," the judge declared. As the bailiffs moved to take them away, the facade finally cracked. Cameron stood up, his chains rattling. "It wasn't my idea," he screamed, pointing at our father. "He told me to do it. He said the trust fund was the only way to save the company. He made me." "You liar," my father roared back, lunging at Cameron before the guards held him back. "You weak, pathetic child. You couldn't even finish the job. And you," Cameron turned to our mother. "You stood there. You watched him drown and you worried about the merger. I tried to protect you," my mother wailed, sobbing hysterically. "I did everything for you." They were dragged out of the courtroom screaming at each other. The united front had disintegrated into a chaotic, ugly brawl. I sat there, feeling a strange hollowness in my chest. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt a profound sense of relief that I would never have to sit at a dinner table with these people again. The months that followed were a slow process of dismantling the Mitchell empire. With my father in jail and the assets frozen, the company collapsed almost overnight. The creditors descended like vultures. The luxury cars, the vacation homes, the yacht. Everything was seized to pay off the massive debts my father had hidden for years. It turned out the merger was a fraud from the start. My father had been cooking the books to make the company look profitable to attract a buyer, hoping to cash out before the house of cards fell. Cameron's promotion was just him being set up as the fall guy for the eventual bankruptcy. My brother had almost killed me for a crown made of cardboard. But there was one asset the creditors couldn't touch: grandmother's trust. Because of the bad actor clause that Isaac had triggered, my father was stripped of his trusteeship. The court ruled that by attempting to harm a beneficiary, both he and Cameron had forfeited their rights to the fund. I sat in Isaac's office 6 months later, staring at a check. $5 million. "It's all yours, Julian," Isaac said softly. "Your grandmother wanted to make sure you were safe. I think she knew on some level what they were capable of." "I don't want it," I said, pushing the check back. "It feels like blood money." "It's not blood money," Isaac corrected me sternly. "It's justice. It's the salary you were never paid for the years of abuse you endured. It's your college fund that they stole to buy Porsches. Take it. Use it to build something good. That is the best revenge." I took the check, but I had one more piece of business to attend to before I could move on. The estate, Emerald Hill, was being foreclosed on. But before the bank took possession, I had the legal right to retrieve my personal belongings. I drove my Jeep up that long, winding driveway one last time. The grass was overgrown. The hedges were untrimmed. The house looked dark and abandoned. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the foyer. The air smelled stale, like dust and old secrets. I walked through the empty rooms. The furniture had been repossessed. The paintings were gone. It was just a shell. I walked out to the backyard, to the pool. The water was green and murky now, filled with dead leaves. I stood at the edge, looking down at the spot where I had almost died. I expected to feel fear, to have a flashback, but the water just looked small. It was just a concrete hole in the ground. It held no power over me anymore. "Julian." I turned. Standing by the back gate was Nathan, my cousin, the one who had lured me to the party. He looked disheveled. His designer clothes were wrinkled, and he looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "What do you want, Nathan?" I asked, not moving. I heard you were here, Nathan stammered, walking closer but keeping a safe distance. I just wanted to talk. We have nothing to talk about. Look, man, I'm sorry, Nathan said, his voice cracking. I didn't know. I swear. Cameron just told me to get you there. He said he wanted to make peace. If I had known what they were planning. You knew enough. I cut him off. You knew they hated me. You knew they were setting me up to look crazy. You played your part, Nathan. You wanted to be close to the power. You wanted a ride in the Porsche. I'm broke, Julian, Nathan whispered, tears welling in his eyes. My dad. He invested everything with Uncle Robert. We lost the house. We lost everything. I can't even finish my last semester of college. He looked at me with pleading eyes. He knew about the 5 million. He was here to beg. I need help, Jules. We're family. There it was again. That word. Family. Family doesn't lure you into a trap, I said, my voice hard as stone. Family doesn't watch you drown and call it a cramp. You chose your side, Nathan. You bet on the wrong horse. Please, he begged. Just a loan. I'll pay you back. No, I said. I'm not going to give you a dime, but I will give you some advice. Get a job. Start over. And never call me again. I walked past him, bumping his shoulder. He didn't try to stop me. He just stood there by the green, rotting pool, weeping for the life he thought he was entitled to. As I walked back to my Jeep, I saw another car pull up, a modest sedan. Sophia stepped out. She looked different. She wasn't wearing the heavy makeup or the flashy jewelry she used to wear when she was Cameron's trophy fiancée. She looked simpler, cleaner. I'm not here to ask for anything, Sophia said before I could speak. She stood by her car, clutching her purse. I wanted to return this. She held out a small box. I opened it. It was a pair of cufflinks. Gold. Engraved with my initials. Cameron stole these from your room years ago, she said. He bragged about it. He said he took them just to see if you'd notice. I found them in his jewelry case when the police let me get my things. I looked at the cufflinks. My grandmother had given them to me for my graduation. I thought I had lost them. Thank you, I said, genuinely surprised. I'm sorry, Julian, Sophia said, looking down at the ground. I should have seen it. The way he talked about you, I thought it was just sibling rivalry. I didn't know he was a monster. He was good at hiding it, I said. Until he wasn't. I visited him, she said quietly. In jail. Why? To say goodbye. To see him one last time without the suit and the money. She shuddered. He's not sorry, Julian. He's just angry that he got caught. He blames you. He blames everyone but himself. I'm glad I got out. If it weren't for you exposing him, I would have married him. I might have been the next victim. You're free now, Sophia, I said. So are you? She smiled, a sad, small smile. Good luck, Julian. She got in her car and drove away. I watched her go, feeling the last thread of my old life snap. I had one final stop, the police impound lot. My father's assets were being sold to pay creditors, but because the Porsche 911, Cameron's car, had been purchased using funds that were legally traced back to the misappropriation of my trust interest, Isaac had managed to get a court order awarding the vehicle to me as part of the restitution. The officer at the lot led me to it. The matte black Porsche. It sat there, covered in a thin layer of dust, looking like a dormant predator. This was the symbol of Cameron's arrogance. This was the car he blocked me in with. This was the car he planned to drive over my grave. Nice ride, the officer muttered. You gonna keep it? No, I said, running my hand over the cold metal hood. I'm going to sell it. I listed the car the next day. I didn't want top dollar. I just wanted it gone. A collector bought it within 24 hours for $180,000. I took that check along with a significant portion of the 5 million, and I went to the bank. I opened a new account. Not for me. I drove down to the coast to a small, rundown building near the marina that used to be a bait shop. It had a for sale sign in the window. I bought it. I spent the next 6 months renovating it. I tore down the rotting wood, painted the walls a bright, ocean blue, and installed a state-of-the-art classroom and a training pool. I named it the Deep End. It wasn't just a dive shop. It was a sanctuary. I reached out to the foster care system in the city. I offered free swimming and scuba certification courses for teenagers who had aged out of the system. Kids who had no family, no support, kids who felt like they were drowning in a system that didn't care about them. I wanted to give them what the ocean gave me: silence, weightlessness, and the knowledge that if you just keep breathing, you can survive the pressure. The day we opened, Isaac came to cut the ribbon. He was older now, walking with a cane, but his eyes were bright. "Your grandmother would be proud," Isaac said, watching the first group of awkward, shy teenagers putting on their wetsuits. "I'm not doing it for her," I said, watching a young boy named Leo look at the water with a mixture of fear and wonder. "I'm doing it for the 10-year-old boy who fell out of a treehouse and had no one to catch him." I walked over to Leo. He was trembling. "Scared?" I asked. "A little," Leo admitted. "I don't know if I can do it." "It's okay to be scared," I told him, placing a hand on his shoulder. A gentle, supportive hand, not a heavy, crushing one. "But you're not alone down there. I'm right here with you. I won't let you sink." Leo looked at me, and for the first time he smiled. That night, I went home to my small house by the beach. It wasn't a mansion. It didn't have manicured hedges or white tuxedo waiters. It was full of sand and wetsuits drying on the porch. I sat on my deck, listening to the waves crash against the shore. I thought about my parents sitting in their cells. My father had been sentenced to 10 years for fraud and conspiracy. My mother got 8 years. Cameron, because he was the primary aggressor and showed zero remorse, got 15 years. They were gone. They were just ghosts now. Stories I would tell someday, maybe, but not tonight. Tonight, the air smelled like salt and freedom. 1 year later, the sun was high over the Atlantic, turning the surface of the ocean into a sheet of hammered diamonds. I adjusted my mask, bit down on my regulator, and rolled backward off the side of the boat. The impact was jarring for a split second, and then, peace. I descended through the blue water. 10 feet, 20 feet, 60 feet. The pressure built against my ears, a familiar, comforting squeeze. I equalized and kept going. Down here, there were no lies. There were no trust funds, no mergers, no reputations to uphold. There was only the rhythmic sound of my own breath, in, out, and the slow, majestic dance of the kelp forest. I wasn't alone. Behind me, a group of 6 students from the Deep End were following in a loose formation. They moved awkwardly, still learning buoyancy control, but they were calm. They trusted the gear. They trusted me. I watched Leo. A year ago, he was a terrified kid who couldn't swim a lap. Now, he was hovering effortlessly over a reef, watching a crab scuttle into a crevice. His eyes behind the mask were wide with wonder. He gave me the okay hand signal. I signaled back. We drifted along the current. I thought about how much my life had changed. People often ask me if I forgive them, if time has softened the edges of that night in the pool. The answer is complicated. I don't carry the hate anymore. Hate is heavy. It's like diving with too much lead on your belt. It drags you down, makes you burn through your air faster. I let the hate go the day I sold the Porsche. But forgiveness? No. Forgiveness implies that what they did was a mistake, a lapse in judgment. It wasn't. It was a choice. They chose money over my life. They chose appearance over love. You don't forgive a shark for biting you. It's in their nature. You just get out of the water and make sure you never swim with them again. I haven't visited them. I haven't answered their letters. My mother writes sometimes. Her letters are filled with guilt trips and Bible verses, trying to manipulate me from behind bars. She talks about how hard prison is, how the food is terrible, how she misses her garden. She never once mentions the pool. She never once says, "I'm sorry I watched you die." I burn the letters unopened. I don't need her version of reality anymore. I have my own. My reality is this diving school. It's the scholarship fund I set up that has already sent 3 kids to college. Kids who, like Nathan, lost everything, but unlike Nathan, chose to work for a second chance rather than beg for it. My reality is Sophia, who stops by the shop sometimes for coffee. We aren't dating, we have too much shared trauma for that. But we are friends. We are witnesses to each other's survival. She's studying to be a paralegal inspired by Isaac. She wants to help people trapped in abusive contracts. My reality is Isaac, who passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 months ago. He left me his vintage compass collection and a note that said, "You found your true north, Julian. Keep heading that way." We finished the dive and ascended slowly, following the bubbles to the surface. We broke the water, gasping in the fresh, salty air. The kids were laughing, high-fiving each other, shouting about the fish they saw. "Did you see that turtle?" Leo yelled, spitting out his mouthpiece. "It was huge. I saw it." I laughed, pulling myself onto the boat. "Next time, try not to chase it. You'll scare it away." I wasn't chasing it. I was escorting it. Leo grinned. As I steered the boat back toward the marina, the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. I looked at the horizon. For a long time, I thought my inheritance was supposed to be money. I thought it was the estate, the name, the legacy. But looking at these kids, looking at the life I built from the wreckage, I realized my true inheritance wasn't something my father could give me or take away. My inheritance was my resilience. It was the ability to hold my breath when things got dark, and the strength to kick for the surface when the light appeared. My brother tried to use water to kill me. He didn't know that water was my element. He didn't know that you can't drown a man who has already learned to breathe underwater. I docked the boat and started unloading the tanks. The work was heavy, physical, and honest. My muscles ached in a good way, not from being held down, but from lifting others up. I walked to the end of the dock as the last of the students left. I took out my phone. I still had the audio file saved, backed up on a secure cloud. I hadn't listened to it in months. I hovered my finger over the delete button. I thought about it. Erasing it would be symbolic, a final letting go. But then I put the phone back in my pocket. No, I wouldn't delete it. It wasn't a weapon anymore. It was a scar. And scars are important. They remind us where we've been. They remind us that we survived. I turned and walked back toward the shop, the lights of the deep end glowing warm and welcoming in the twilight. I was 31 years old. I was alone in the traditional sense, no parents, no brother, no wife. But I looked around at the community I had built, the lives I was touching. I wasn't alone. I was free. And for the first time in my life, I could breathe. If there is one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this: blood is biology, not destiny. We are taught from a young age that family is everything, that we must honor and protect them no matter what. But that loyalty is a two-way street. When family becomes a source of pain, manipulation, and danger, you have every right to break the contract. My parents and brother used my loyalty as a weapon against me. They counted on my silence. They weaponized my desire to be loved. Toxic people, whether they are parents, partners, or siblings, will often test your boundaries to see how much you will endure. They will make you doubt your own reality, gaslighting. Just like my parents tried to convince the world I was crazy. You must realize that your worth is not defined by how much abuse you can tolerate. Saving yourself is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of survival. If you are in a situation where you feel you are drowning, please reach for the surface. Document everything. Find your Isaac or Dr. Elijah, people who see the truth. And remember, you can build a new family, a chosen family based on respect, not just DNA. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to cut ties with a toxic family member to save your own mental health? What was the moment you realized enough is enough? If you made it to the end of this journey with me, drop a good in the comments below. It lets me know that this story resonated with you and that we are building a community of survivors right here. Your interaction helps more people find this message. Thank you for listening. And remember, just keep breathing.